All right, so you know how we all daydream about those perfect fishing days? The peace, the quiet, the thrill of the catch. Well, today we're going to flip the script. We're diving into the stories where those relaxing fishing trips took a seriously creepy turn.
Yeah. Fishing, it really can expose us to the unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I asked you guys for your most unnerving fishing tales, and let me tell you, you guys really delivered.
Oh, I bet. It's like when you're out there fishing, you're often in these really isolated spots, right? Right on the edge of the unknown, you know, deep waters or dense woods.
Right, yeah.
And it's like it reminds you that even in our modern world, there are still places where we're vulnerable. I mean, it really plays on those primal fears.
Okay, so let's jump into our first story. This one's from a listener who wanted to stay anonymous, and it takes place at this secluded pond.
Ooh, secluded. Okay.
Like the kind that seems like the perfect escape until it isn't.
Right, right.
So picture this. You're settled in at your favorite fishing spot, the sun is shining, and everything is peaceful.
Ah, yeah. I can picture it.
Then suddenly, you're not alone anymore.
Oh, here we go.
Our listener noticed an older man appear from the trees, rowing a small boat.
Okay.
But there was something off about the sky.
Right, right.
Like at first glance, nothing seemed threatening, right? Maybe just another person looking to fish.
Yeah.
But something just felt wrong.
Yeah, I think we're hardwired to pick up on those subtle cues, right? Those cues that signal danger, even if we can't exactly pinpoint what they are. It's like a sixth sense, that feeling of unease.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a secluded spot like this, where it's just you and the stranger, it's intensified, right? Because there's no one else around.
Exactly, yeah.
So the stranger rows closer and closer, but here's the really unsettling part. He doesn't fish.
He doesn't.
He doesn't talk. He just stares.
Oh, that's creepy.
Can you imagine that feeling? Just like quiet, intense observation with no way to know what he's thinking.
Ugh, yeah. Whether he was doing it intentionally or not, that kind of behavior, that's psychologically manipulative.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that stare. It creates this power dynamic,
Right.
like making the observer the hunter and our listener, in this case, the prey.
And as if that wasn't creepy enough, our listener starts packing up his stuff to leave, and the stranger says, I can't let you leave. I don't know about you, but my fight or flight response would be in overdrive at that point. What about you?
Oh, absolutely.
That
It's a direct threat, right?
Right.
And triggers that primal fear of being trapped, of losing your freedom. It's totally natural to react strongly in a situation like that.
So our listener does what any sane person would do.
Yeah.
He jumps into the water, swims to shore, and runs. He doesn't stop for half a mile, heart pounding, not daring to look back.
Right.
You'd think that would be the end of it, right? I mean, he got away.
Right. He's safe, yeah.
Wrong. Hours later, he's safe at home, lying in bed, and he hears a voice outside his window.
No way.
The same voice. The stranger says, Hey, buddy, you up there.
Oh my gosh, that is so creepy.
That last detail, I think that's what makes this story so powerful. Like, it leaves you with so many questions. Was it really him? What did he want? And how did he find him?
Right.
It just shows you how deeply these kinds of encounters can affect you, Even after you escape the initial threat, that feeling of being hunted can linger.
Absolutely. It makes you really think about personal safety, even in situations that seem harmless at first.
Yeah. I read somewhere that criminals often target people who appear vulnerable. Like if your car is messy or if you look lost, it's like you might be more likely to become a target.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like that break-in window theory of crime.
Yeah.
If a place looks neglected, people are more likely to commit crimes there because it seems like no one cares.
Right.
And I think the same principle can apply to personal appearance and behavior too. If you project confidence and look like you're aware of what's going on around you, you're less likely to be seen as an easy target.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So even something as simple as maintaining a neat appearance and just projecting confidence can deter unwanted attention.
Yeah, I think it's a reminder that even in seemingly peaceful settings, staying aware of your surroundings and taking basic precautions can really make a big difference.
Okay, so that was a story about a creepy encounter on land. But sometimes the danger isn't what's lurking in the water, but who you might encounter on it.
Right. Okay.
Let's head out to the open water for our next story.
All right, let's do it. I'm ready.
So this next story, it comes from a group of friends. They went on a night fishing trip and they learned the scariest thing about it isn't always, what's beneath the waves, right? It's about who you might invite on board.
Yeah, that's true. When you're out on the open water, especially at night, you're so vulnerable. It really makes you think,
Right.
like how isolation and things like, if you've been drinking can really cloud your judgment.
Yeah.
And they make you more susceptible to danger.
Yeah. It's a good point. And it really plays on those classic fears we all have about the vastness of the ocean, the feeling of being completely alone. Okay, so picture this. A group of friends out for a night fishing trip. The mood is light, right? Drinks are flowing, they're enjoying each other's company. Then, as the sun sets, darkness rolls in, and they hear this faint cry for help. Out of the gloom, a small boat appears with two men who claim they're stranded. Out of fuel, no food.
Oh, wow. A distress call like that, it creates an instant dilemma. Like, do you risk your own safety to help these strangers? And in this case, they'd been drinking, which, probably impaired their ability to really think straight, to assess the situation clearly.
Yeah, for sure. It's that classic horror movie setup, right? The good deed that backfires. So, feeling charitable and maybe a little less cautious than they should be, the group invites the strangers onto their boat. And at first, it just seems like a simple act of kindness, but as the night goes on, some unsettling details start to emerge.
Right, it's like how our brains are kind of wired to pick up on those
Yeah, Louis.
inconsistencies.
Oh, yeah.
Even when we can't articulate what exactly is wrong,
Yeah.
we just get that feeling that something isn't right.
Yeah. Like the strangers are super quiet, almost eerily observant. They don't seem genuinely grateful, more like they're watching, calculating. And then after everyone falls asleep.
Yeah, that's when the story really taps into that fear of the unknown.
Right.
We don't know who these strangers are or what they want, what they're capable of. And that silence, that just makes it even more unsettling.
Right, like the saying, still waters run deep. Okay, so they wake up the next morning and the strangers are gone, vanished, without a trace. And it gets worse. Not only are the strangers gone, but some of their stuff is missing too. A few cans of gas and, creepiest of all, a wallet.
Oh, wow. The missing items, that changes everything. It's like, was that whole stranded story, was that all a lie?
Right.
Just a way to get onto the boat? I mean, it really raises the possibility of maritime crime, which is a real danger out on the water.
And then, get this, weeks later, one of the friends is checking his security cameras, and what does he see? Two men trying to break into his house.
Oh, no way.
Now, they'll never know for sure if it was the same men, but the timing, that feeling of familiarity, it's chilling. What started as this fun fishing trip becomes this haunting memory, a constant reminder that danger can be lurking anywhere. Even a good deed can have terrifying consequences.
Ugh. What's so disturbing about that is that violation of their sense of security. Like, even in their own home, they don't feel safe anymore. And that lingering fear that can be incredibly hard to shake.
It really makes you question, who you can trust, especially in those isolated situations. It reminds me of those maritime distress signals, like flares, SOS signals. I wonder if they'd known about those, if they could have used them to verify the stranger's story.
That's a really good point. I mean, knowing those signals and how to use them, that could be life-saving. I mean, it's all about being prepared, even for the unexpected. And there are also basic self-defense techniques that, could be really useful in situations like these. Nothing too complicated, but just simple things that, could give you an advantage if you were ever attacked.
Like being aware of your surroundings, having an escape route, knowing how to defend yourself if you had to.
Exactly. It's not about being paranoid or anything like that.
Yeah.
But just about, being empowered.
Being prepared.
Yeah. Having the knowledge and the skills to protect yourself if you ever find yourself in a dangerous situation. Okay, so are you ready for our final story?
Oh, yeah, bring on the chills.
This one is seriously creepy.
Okay, so this one involves a remote lake and an encounter that shook even a seasoned fisherman to his core. Okay, so we're back. And you guys, this final story is a real nail-biter. It comes from a listener who, he went fishing with his 84-year-old grandfather.
Wow, okay.
Now, this guy, this grandfather, he knew these waters like the back of his hand.
Yeah.
So if something spooked him, it's got to be seriously unsettling.
Right, that's true. This one really gets to that primal fear of the unknown, especially when it comes to deep water,
Yeah.
It just reminds you that even with all our technology and all our knowledge, there are still mysteries out there that we just can't explain.
So picture this. They head out to this remote lake, far from civilization. The kind of place where you expect peace and quiet, nothing but the sounds of nature.
Yeah.
And the grandfather, a man who'd spent his entire life on the water, he's scanning the lake, and he spots something unnatural.
Okay, the setting is so important in this story. The remoteness, the isolation, it creates this atmosphere of vulnerability. Right. And as the story unfolds, The tension just keeps building and building.
Right. It's like they've stepped outside the boundaries of the known world. At first, it's just a shadow, like beneath the surface. Then it gets closer and closer, starts to take shape. And the grandfather, being the curious type, he leans in for a closer look, trying to figure out what he's seeing, and then it grabs him.
Oh my gosh. That moment of contact, that's just pure horror. It's like the unknown becomes tangible, threatening. It completely shatters that illusion of safety that we often feel when we're doing something familiar, like fishing.
Like something out of a monster movie, right?
Hmm.
This creature from the depths reaching up to grab him, the grandfather, a guy who had weathered countless storms and choppy waters. He's absolutely terrified. He says he saw a face, but not a human face. Something otherworldly.
Oh gosh.
Needless to say, they hightailed it out of there, leaving everything behind.
I bet. The grandfather's reaction really speaks volumes. Like, this is a guy who isn't easily spooked, right? I mean, he's experienced, he knows the water.
Right.
But this encounter shook him to his core. It makes you think, what did they actually see out there?
It really highlights the power of the unknown. Hearing stories about sea monsters, that's one thing, but actually experiencing something that defies explanation, something that challenges your whole understanding of the world,
Yeah.
that's a whole other level of unsettling.
Yeah, these stories are like glimpses into the vastness of what we don't know. It's a reminder that we haven't conquered nature. Not completely. There are still forces out there beyond our control. Mysteries that may never be fully understood.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what else is out there lurking beneath the surface? Are there creatures we haven't even imagined? Or are these encounters just reflections of our own fears projected onto the unknown? It's a question each of us has to answer for ourselves.
That's the beauty of these stories, right? They make us think, they make us question, they remind us to approach the unknown with a sense of wonder and caution.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into these horrifying fishing tales, what are some things you hope our listeners will take away from this?
Well, I think first, it's important to remember that these are extreme cases, right? I mean, millions of people enjoy fishing safely every year. But I do think they highlight the importance of awareness, preparation, and trusting your gut, even in situations that seem harmless.
Absolutely. It's not about living in fear, it's about being informed and taking sensible precautions.
Absolutely. And second, these stories really show us that danger can come from unexpected places, not just from nature, but from other people too. So trusting your instincts about someone, especially when you're isolated, that's crucial. If something feels off, it probably is.
Don't ignore those gut feelings. And I think these stories also remind us of the power of sharing these experiences, right? Because it helps us connect, realize we're not alone in our fears, and maybe even learn from each other.
Yeah, exactly. Sharing these stories, it can spark these conversations about safety, awareness, and the limits of what we actually understand. And ultimately, they can help us become more informed and prepared.
So, as we cast off on this final thought, we want to leave you with this question. What would you do if you found yourself in a similar situation? How would you react when faced with something unexpected, unsettling, or downright terrifying?
It's a question we're thinking about because ultimately these stories aren't just about fishing. They're about human nature, our capacity for good and evil, and our never-ending fascination with the mysteries that lie just beyond our grasp.
Well said. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the shadowy side of fishing. Stay curious, stay safe, and keep those fishing stories coming. We're always eager to hear what's lurking beneath the surface. Until next time, happy fishing and sweet dreams.